I said to myself the other day, Tucker, it's sad, and I was telling the people, because it'll never happen again. This is never going to happen again. I don't care. I just don't believe it. It's never happened in any country. When Biden got up with the red background, the pink background, and he looked like the devil, he looked so stupid, right? And he said, we will stop MAGA. MAGA, we're going to... I said, listen, you stupid bastard. MAGA means, because I think if you asked him what does it mean, he doesn't know. MAGA means make America great again. That's what MAGA means.
There we go. Well, how's everybody doing? And welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. My goodness, so anybody that caught my my sort of explanation episode, or my bringing up to date episode, whatever you want to call it, thank you guys for checking that out. Actually, quite a bit has happened since then. I did actually, I'd planned to do the show yesterday, because I mentioned I was going to be up in the next day or two, and I was really expecting that, okay, well, you can do it, but then it was like, okay, because I still have a bit of a sniffle, but I had a really nasty cold and kind of a sinus infection. It just... it wasn't going to work with me sniffing, but because of that little bit of a hiccup, that did actually have some pretty nice perks to it. There's two in particular. The first was that, well, I did get to catch some video clips that I thought were really going to be appropriate for this episode, because you know, as I mentioned the last time I was doing the show, well, when I was discussing in the unofficial video about the upsides and downsides to starting the show now, and what that actually means, and like the idea was, yeah, it's going to be probably a much better idea to start the show during the election. Closer to the election, and definitely try to get it up before the election. But there was the downside too, which was that you know, you're not going to be able to escape the news cycle. Period. It's not going to happen. You know, the only kind of news that's going to be around for the most part is going to be election related, because I don't know if you guys have seen this, but man, like every country around the world, even stuff where major events are going on, everybody's fixated on this American election. And for good reason. I mean, you know, there's countries that are concerned, countries that are interested, and countries that are excited, and everywhere in between. I mean, it's pretty wild, but I don't think I've ever remembered hearing so much from the international sorts of news organizations, and even just catching clips of ones that, from languages I can't understand. They're obviously talking about the American election. This is like so huge, and unfortunately, you know, we kind of ruined our credibility with our own population in terms of saying well, I remember first hearing it in 2004 with the Bush-Kerry election. This is the most important election of our lives. And then the next one, 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 and then we're on this one, and we've heard it every election cycle, so it does not carry at all the same weight. But I think, for the most part, when you live in this country especially, things definitely are like, yeah, there's a whole lot of things that are very, very unique about this particular election that are going to... if anybody's saying the next election is the most important, I don't know. I can't, look into the future unless it's like, some kind of incredibly well-known psychotic authoritarian versus a bumbling, complete, insane, ridiculous fool who knows nothing. Well, that wouldn't even be that important. That would just be a doomed delay. I don't know. I don't know what could top it at this point, though, because at this point, when you look at, I haven't gone full bore into, my I'm sure everybody can guess by this point exactly what my political leanings are, but I've not really gone deep into it. But I will say this. So in 2016, I was still kind of lefter leaning, but I was not at all really. I was just not up to speed. Like I said, I was coming out of the tattooing where I'd really been 100% focused on just that for so long. I didn't bother watching the news. I didn't bother watching elections or political information or anything. I just was so focused on tattooing all the time, and also at the same. I gotta admit, there was I haven't talked about this at all, and sorry, I'm a big nerd. This is my interests in many time periods. There's competitive gaming going on. At that point, it was StarCraft 2, but and then it moved into Dota 2 for a while. But anyway, but then it moved into fighting games in particular, and that was the first time I really started going to like actual local events to play in tournaments, whether they be local or if they were, like a regional event for qualifying for different other major events and things like that. And I was never someone who was extremely high performing, but I did hold my own in several occasions. Not the very first one, but the ones after that, I started to kind of pick up speed. Funny story, though. Twice in a row when I played at the regionals, anybody that follows fighting game stuff, the very first match I had, and bear in mind, I hadn't even been to a local yet. I'd just been to this regional event, and that was it. So I was really out of my league. But, like, I was just more there just to have a good time. I had no delusions about winning anything. But and I'm sorry to go off on a tear, but I just think this is funny. So I was registered in 3 games that year, and the first 2 are on the first day, and then this third one was on the second day. So, but the ones I was in on the first day, they were both kind of happening at the same time. So I had to keep walking back and forth, trying to make sure my name wasn't called for to be up for the next match, and I kind of was getting concerned after a little while, and I was getting worried, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I should bring, because the 2 games were KOF, King of Fighters 13, and Blaze Blue Central Fiction, I think it was at the time. I think that was still Central Fiction. If it wasn't, it was Chrono Phantasma Extend. I don't remember. Anyway, but the point is that Blaze Blue started after KOF, and I've been kind of, because the guys that were mostly running King of Fighters were guys out of a online vendor that I'd bought a lot of stuff from for a long time, and I'd kind of walked over to their booth and just kind of hung out with them for a while before the actual game started, and so I was familiar at least with them enough. So I walked up to the guy that was holding the clipboard and calling names out, and I said, "Hey, I was just curious. I have a match in another game that's going on right now, and I was just wondering, am I coming up, or should I do I have some time? Because I just want to make sure I'm not going to be caught off guard." He said, "Well, let's see. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's well, you could move if you want to play up next. I could put you up next." I was like, well, "Okay, sure, that's fine." What he didn't tell me. What he didn't tell me was my very first match in my very first tournament in KOF 13, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with King of Fighters, it's one of the more technical fighting games. It's very, it's fast. It's very, very technical in the way that the speed of moves, their the properties of the moves, everything else. Very technical. I won't get into it, but anyway, it's a very highly complex fighting game, and so I'm starting off in that. I've been playing for a while, but once again, I never played in an actual main tournament, and I get matched up my first match with a guy. If you have any interest in even fighting games in general, you're going to know who I'm talking about. Arcade Shock Hell Pockets. So this is actually a guy who announces at all the major events the top 8 finals, pretty much for like several games over the course of even at things like Evo and like the biggest events in the country and internationally sometimes. But he's super well known, and he plays in all the events, and he's never somebody that finishes super high. But I mean, this is how embedded this guy is in the fighting game scene. My very first opponent, and I'm going up and I'm getting my ass whooped. I know I'm getting my ass whooped. There's no chance I'm going to be able to even come close. And of course I didn't, but I still had a good time. And the funniest part was my brother was in the crowd at the time too, and he was watching this. And every game that day, they're all kind of like, there's like 4 areas, and each game is played in one of those 4 areas. But they have a main monitor, and sometimes like one of them is set for the arena to be able to see easier on the projector screen. And of course that was mine. and of course it's this match. And I go in and I shake the guy's hand, and I even joke around with him, and he's like, "Man, all right, have a good one." I was like, "Yeah, I know you're gonna whoop me though." He's like, "Oh, come on, I'm not that good." I was like, "Well, come on, dude, you're the voice of fighting games." He's like, "Oh, come on, man." He was kind of embarrassed, but the funniest part was that after the match, because when you're playing, they put you on, your faces on camera, and then side by side with the game, just before the game starts. And then as they go into the game, they just focus on, they take the camera off, and they just focus on just the game on image, and that's it. So the whole match, as I'm getting whooped, that's up on the screen. As soon as that's done, then they go only to the face camera for both the players. And my brother was in the crowd. I had no idea what was going on the screen, but because I got whooped so bad, and because it was like this was great. This was fun, and I got to meet and hang out with these dudes that I'd heard of and seen a bunch of times. I thought it was fun, but my brother told me that as soon as it cut back, it was me laughing, like patting him on the back and shaking his hand, and him kind of chuckling. And he's like, "Man, you guys look like you're like best friends. You're having a good old time." I was like, "Oh, well, hey, I looked good then. That's fine." But no, that was my very first game tournament experience. The rest of the week went all right for me, much better than that did. But then the next time I went to that regional, I'll just briefly mention, I don't know if those guys had it out for me or what. I kind of do, because there was one other thing that happened. Although they didn't mean for it to happen, I'll just say it like that. And then they kind of blushed around me for the rest of the day, because they didn't know I heard them. But I didn't give a shit. I kind of walked past them and just gave them a big grin as I walked by. But anyway, that was just, who cares? But the funnier part, and why I say they I don't know if they had it out for me or what, but the next time, so this is when KOF 14s come out, and I'm doing much better at KOF 14 than 13, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll do a little bit better this time, and I did, but not in the first match. And that's because this was even more of a nightmare scenario, because it wasn't an announcer guy or anything. No, this was a guy who consistently in almost every major event finishes in the top 8, and has also very often been the winner of the entire tournament. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But no, and the worst part was, as opposed to last time where, KOF was in one of the places on in the room that was being broadcast on the what do you call it, the projector screens. This time they had 2 stages set up on each side of this, and you can probably see where this is going. But you know, anybody else who's in the event is playing off to the side also. But the one event that they decide to put up on the stage is also the event that they are focusing on for the live stream, and it's also the event that you can see no matter where you are in the room. I will say this, although he did beat my ass too, I was actually, surprisingly, just because of how much more time I'd played, I was actually doing significantly better than crap. But no, I actually wasn't as big of a push. I didn't make nearly as many mistakes. But the dude, he's like, oh. When you watch, if you get into, if you're into, or if you ever check out like high level play in fighting games in particular, the guys that finish in the top end of the tournaments, when you watch them play, it's not always obvious unless you know like some of the more technical details. And when you do, you're just like, man, these guys are crazy. Like, how are they able to do this well? It's crazy. But they are, and it's just like it becomes so apparent when you do a match on them why. Like they know how to read everything you're gonna do. They know what you're gonna do before you do. It's crazy, and unless you can condition yourself to kind of think that way, then because that was never something I was good at. I was much more reactive than somebody who was playing it like chess, and there are people that kind of look at it that way, kind of like speed chess. So, and this is one of the Japanese players, and they're always like, because most fighting games, actually do come from Japan. So, he was just like, oh man, he was just like, that was where I really got a taste of that. Man, this dude's next level. Meanwhile, I went on to go play Blaze Blue this year on Central Fiction, and I actually won my first match. I lost the second one, but and the third one, but I won the first. You have to be beaten in 2 matches to be knocked out. So that was the first one I won an actual full match in, and I was so stoked. But later I went on to do local events, and I did much better there. I won quite a few times there in different games, but I wish I could go back. COVID ruined the whole thing for me for a while, and now I just there's not that many fighting games I like as much as I did back then. But anyway, that was a side tangent. I'm sorry. I remember that story, and I was just like, man, I got to talk about this because this was funny. But anyway, so yeah, oh man, whoops. Anyway, if you haven't noticed, so just to kind of bring forward the main point that really essentially sent me on that hiatus for a while, because I actually was, like I said, it was a stupid mistake, and I mentioned this before, but I hadn't been actually rewatching the videos after I'd done the stream and checked out what I'd done, but I had I had the video up, but I hadn't, rewatched the video and had the audio come through to make sure everything was working. And that was stupid. But the main reason I didn't is because when you use OBS and you see, your microphone volume and it's operating without anything abnormal happening, it doesn't look like there's anything different going on, then you... for me, it's just like, okay, it looks like everything's working fine. But no, it's you have to actually check on that stuff. And I the worst part was that because I didn't do that, and because I was kind of surprised at the people that had turned out. I didn't expect, I barely expected anybody, and I was seeing, every channel I've been in has been very modest, and so, 10 viewers at most for the most part. And I was already getting past that with just this show. And I couldn't quite figure it out, but I was like, man, this is awesome. And then I find out that every single thing I'd done up to that point had basically such low volume you couldn't really even barely hear it, and you couldn't understand it, and it hit me like a ton of bricks immediately, and it was just like great. And I told you guys, like, I have the worst luck humanly possible, and I was kind of like, for just a second there, I was like so freaking just like fed up. I just like, here we go again, and so it just immediately sent me off into a tailspin, and I was just, oh man. But when I came back and did the discussion, I had already been looking into a lot of things that I've been doing, and recognized that I've been doing wrong, and I wanted to make sure that I moved back to being as professional as I possibly could with everything, and so I fiddled around with all my settings, and I got them working. But the funny part is that the other thing that came up was I've been looking into some upgrades to some gear for a while, and I hadn't settled 100% except for on one thing, which was it wasn't actually something I picked up yet, but because I figured out the reason that had been basically the center culprit for what I had done wrong with the episodes before that. And there was one main problem, and then there was other branching problems that came off after that for the audio. And come to find out, okay, and the reason was, long story short, it was set up in a different setup. It worked great for that setup. I put it into another setup that I figured was the same, and it was going to, all the settings shouldn't need to change, but they did. And because I didn't change them, they sounded that way. So I went back, I changed everything. I even ran through, because like getting used to the way high-end studio signal processors work, you got to learn a bunch of terms. You have to know what those terms mean. You have to know what they mean in the context of the wider set of audio signal processing in relationship to everything else that is in the chain. And then finally, you kind of have to fine-tune it at the very end to get it to sound good. And your ultimate goal is to make it silent unless you're talking, and then it has to be something that has to be above a certain tone while not going too far over the edge into another tone, because then it'll blow the mic out. And even in the stream where I came back, I had corrected the volume, and I had almost gotten it right, but I was still blowing out, and it was popping every time I would blow out, so you could hear it. But then I went back the next day, and I sat down and kind of was fiddling with something that I knew could fix that. I did, and I got it just right, and I was like, okay, this is perfect. But I had ordered that other piece, and this was a new compressor, and it was coming sometime soon. I didn't know when, but it came yesterday afternoon. And so I don't know if you notice a massive difference. I know you notice a massive difference in terms of being able to at least hear me. But I don't know how... to me, I checked it on my headphones before. This time I've been making sure by just monitoring my own output through my headphones before I start the show, and changing anything there. And today I turned it on. I was like, oh my God. Wow. So I'm very pleased with this, and I'm super excited to start using this because, man, it was like... because of how complex and difficult it was to get the other one set up, this one was like cakewalk for me. This one's so much easier to set up, and I didn't think I was going to have it ready before I started today, but man, it took like 15 minutes, and I had it set exactly where I thought it would sound best, and it sounded to me as I listened to it, it sounded like, oh, there we go. Okay. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this much better today than the last episode. I'm definitely feeling much better about it. So anyway, let's get on with the actual subject of the show. I'm sorry, I just had to let know a few things, because I'm finally feeling much better about the show. And once again, just last thing, thank you guys so much for it. Those of you who've stuck it out with me this far, and who have come back, and thanks to everybody who's taken the time to check out the show. Although I hate the fact that the first episodes were not exactly the best representation of the show. Thanks for at least giving it a try. If you can't catch anything after that, sorry I was so lazy that I couldn't get the results to come out sounding as good as they should on the first one. Well, at least as good as you can hear it in the first show. But I think from here on out we won't be having any problems. So thank you so much for all you guys that stuck it out, and especially to the guy who was in the chat or in the comments who had mentioned this, because that was one of the other reasons that made me realize exactly what I needed to kind of work on to fix it, because I was just like, I had noticed that in the because streaming to two platforms, that was the first big challenge, and it is still kind of confusing even today. Like I was planning to be on about 10 minutes before I started, but it's because of the dual stream setup, and the first one I was using when I first started was god awful, so I switched to a different plugin. This one's working so much better, but I'm just trying to get used to the new system, and it's sometimes I forget what to set. How to set the stream setup in the actual software to get it to work. So, okay, now I'm really done. So here we've been, man. Anybody bored this last week of the election and information? Because my God, this has been like just in terms of a political election, or an American political election, and the kind of antics you usually see, and people always get used to the October surprise, quote unquote, and the only October surprise I've seen this year is this whole thing has just been like, I don't think I've ever seen more of a one side serious, like constantly just traveling, like I don't know how the dude sleeps, constantly going from place to place, rally to rally, interview to interview. Like it's incredible. And then you go over to the other one. The other side has not much to say. A lot of statements that have to do with no answers to any questions, no statements of policy, no mentions of her current administration, which of course she can't do that, because more on that later, and then worst aspect of them all is when she's left to her own devices to talk off her pre-written speech from probably one of her aides, who she probably hates because they write her speeches and they're not up to par, and it's all their fault. On top of that, every written speech has two main subjects: abortion and Trump is Hitler. And so I guess that's their platform this year. The left is running Kamala Harris, and her platform is no Hitler, more abortions. Even though, I don't know if you guys know this, but after Roe v. Wade was overturned, so far there have been more abortions per year than there were before the Dobbs decision. So what bugs me is not that their stance is what it is on abortion. I'm pro-choice, but I'm old school pro-choice, and maybe a little more strict than your average pro-choicer, but still, I'm kind of flexible on that. But I'm still pro-choice, even the old-fashioned pro-choice way of thinking. However, you can't really say that now because everybody who's pro-choice is now actually more like well, mostly, most of them are now pro-abortion, at least if they're politicians, and a lot of yeah, a lot of people from Hollywood, a lot of people from more upper class types of groups, that especially the ones that provide any kind of campaign funding in large numbers. They're all about the woman has the right to choose what happens to her body, and no, she doesn't, because guess what? Do I have to mention a little event called the COVID pandemic? And it's not just women then, it was everybody. Nobody apparently had control over their own bodies, because at least if they wanted to keep their job, or they wanted to stay in the military, or they want, in those cases, no, they didn't really have much control. But I better not get angry, and I'm just going. Yeah, that's their messaging. And as you can see from the clip, sorry for the crossover. Once again, I didn't turn the volume off on the browser where I have the stream up to monitor it. But the important part is that from what I've been seeing from from the Trump campaign's perspective, things are getting wild because of the media in particular. Now, this is the other part. This is more disgusting than just about anything else, because they've been. I remember when Mitt Romney was the candidate, and he was Hitler too. He was Hitler. Bush was Hitler, of course. And bear in mind, I hate Bush. I still hate Bush. He was funny as hell because he sounded goofy every time he talked, but I really hated his presidency. Just mainly because of the deception that went on there, and to be honest, probably more because of Cheney than Bush himself. But that's beside the point. The point is that the left has been calling people Hitler for so long that then you get Trump, a guy that was loved by everyone in the country, that was in from all walks of life for almost his entire career, and he runs for politics, and suddenly he's the most dangerous threat to the country. And then January 6th and that whole rabbit hole. One day I'll do my own breakdown of January 6th and what I think about it, but not today. But he's running this cycle, and what is most incredible to me is that we've never seen such double standards in the government, at least in my lifetime, but at least as far as I've heard, other than in times where there were, discriminatory laws on the books, and I'm not talking about law enforcement, like local law enforcement or police departments, or I'm not talking about, just average everyday people that are discriminatory. I'm just talking about the federal government, especially the executive branch, the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, all these places. I've never, ever seen a double standard so blatantly obvious, and such pathetic excuses for why the perception would be that way instead of it actually just, being that way. That it's just like, you couldn't be a genius and make an argument as to how that would be feasible. I mean, once you get people who were working child sex trafficking and child exploitation cases, and those people get taken off of those cases to appear at Catholic Mass and school board meetings to essentially spy on the parents and the Catholics to make sure there's no domestic extremism happening there. We got a little issue with your priorities, especially when it comes to the fact that we have an open border, and that is what's facilitating the child sex trafficking, the fentanyl trade, most of the murders that have been happening as a result of, well, pretty much almost all the murders that is happening as a result of illegal migrants. But it's like some of the most vicious murder in a long time, and it's also been why, like, major cities, where they had been so proud to call themselves sanctuary cities, and yeah, immigrants are welcome. We'll warn you when ICE is showing up so you can hide. Now they're, like, either openly angry and trying to figure out how in the hell they're going to house and feed and clothe and keep people under a roof when they came here, and diverting resources away from citizens to like, essentially, is so fed up with all that situation, they just kind of get angry about it, to the ones that try to avoid talking about it and hide the immigration situation as best they can. It's like, it was interesting when I saw they were starting to keep immigrants housed in airports, and they would have these whole areas of airports cordoned off by either curtains, or they would have rooms in back that were big, large areas that were, and there's literally guards standing outside the doors, making sure that no one they don't approve comes in. Like, how do you do this? How in the hell do you do this to the American people, and with a straight face say that the border is secure, the border is closed? It's like, no, something is severely wrong, and not to mention, as I'm gonna keep pounding on this until we hear some kind of answer about this. When you can tell me where the 35,000 missing children are that crossed the border with an adult who they never DNA tested, never figured out if they were actually that child's parent, and now we can't get in contact with them, the child or the parent, when you can start giving some honest facts about the way they talk about fentanyl, the way they talk about asylum, the way they talk about parole, the way they talk about, like, all these, the CBP One app, the way they talk about all these things, it's blatantly obvious that all of these things have been done in a way that is not the way that system was intended to work. Period. There's no way around it. And to try and suggest otherwise is an insult. It's just insulting to everyone that is listening to it, and so that's one major issue. And then, of course, there's general crime, there's general inflation, there's general, like, just about everything that you can possibly imagine is going wrong, and I just, it blows my mind. But there's still, bear in mind, the worst part of Kamala's campaign is that she hasn't addressed any of these things. She hasn't changed her opinion on any of these things. She hasn't said anything when it comes to what they did during the Biden administration versus what she's going to do in her administration. She just keeps repeating points like, yeah, no, my administration is going to be understand the importance of secure borders. And it's like, great, yeah, so do I. So what does that mean? What are you going to do about it? I mean, that doesn't tell me anything. Mayorkas said that too. And you know what else he's been doing? Yeah, you guys locked up Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro for failing to appear after congressionally requested subpoena. Congressionally acquired subpoena to testify before your sham Jan 6 committee jail. Meanwhile, you have these two clowns, and by two I mean Merrick Garland and the biggest scumbag, the one I've been mainly talking about, Alejandro Mayorkas. I think there's been a time they've been before. I may be wrong, but I really highly doubt it. I don't think there's been a time they've appeared before Congress that one of them hasn't lied their ass off the whole time to at least the Republican side of it. Side several times too. They just don't care. So, and this is what's interesting. I never thought I'd ever be somebody that, like C-SPAN and channels that covered political. I'm sorry, I should have worded that differently. Capitol Hill politics, or what's going on in the Senate, the hearings and what the substance was, and what the conclusion was, the witnesses and everything else. And it's probably, maybe in this environment, since Trump got elected the first time, it's been a little bit more interesting and give you more of a reason to watch, because no matter who's in control, and what the topic is, there's just, and I just heard this the other day, and it's interesting. I want to give my take on this because I think it's really important. Nobody really knows this, and it's hard to know unless you actually are somebody who follows Congress and follows the Senate and the House, unless that's kind of something that you do regularly. You probably wouldn't know at all Congress and why those things are happening. Well, I'll briefly touch on it, but I'll go into a full detailed episode at some point, because I think this is one reason the country is really as divisive as it is right now, because here's the reality of the situation. When you think about our founding document, how the three branches of government are supposed to operate, the idea was obviously that operate independently and their own power, while working together despite their differences to come to a conclusion and use that as means to pass law. But it's going to have to go through the pressure cooker of, a very serious discussion between both sides of the aisle in the House and the Senate, and then it's going to have to pass by the executive branch by sending it to the president. The main argument I have is that the reason that is having so much trouble right now is I don't think... What happened to my connection? I think I'm still streaming fine. If something's wrong... Oh, it looks like I dropped out for a second. I think I'm fine. I think the internet had a hiccup. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry, guys. Give me just a second. Let me make sure that this is... I know I had a few people watching, so I don't want to... I don't want to have this drop out right now. Okay, we're good. I see it on YouTube. I think we're good on Rumble. Are we good on Rumble? I'm sorry, I don't have the best system set up for this. As a matter of fact, maybe I should... oh, no, there we go. I think... we're live. Are we? Yeah, we are. Okay. Sorry about that. It looks like we had a hiccup in that, guys. So, but we're back. My point was that... I don't think what they counted on, because bear in mind, of course, at the time of the founding, there weren't parties that were juxtaposed to each other. It wasn't a Democrat, Republican, but I don't think they ever, the parties that elect a candidate, could have been something that would be reasonable to understand and have that be how each election is set up. But I don't think they could have counted on that. Rather than jealously guarding their power in terms of their branch of government, they jealously guard their power in terms of political party affiliation. Meaning, while one party is the majority and one party is the minority, they're not happy until they get back in the majority. They're not happy until their candidate from their party is back in the White House. Because until they can do that, they can't have full control. But this is most strongly pronounced on the Democrat side, because unfortunately, Republicans will be from moderate to pretty staunchly conservative, but that means different things now than more than ever before, because there's the new Trump populist Republican and the old school neocon Republican, and there's still, the neocon Republican is very, very clearly dying off at this point, because if they have a future, it's going to be with the Democrat Party, at least for the time being. But the more populist, more Republican is really resonating with America right now, because, well, I have a video clip about it, but my main point was that the reason is that's why the Republican side is kind of, they have to hash things out, and they have to come to a reasonably agreed upon legislative solution to a question before they will attempt to pass any kind of legislation or any kind of bill or any kind, whatever it might be. But the Democrats, on the other hand, and Tulsi Gabbard talked about this pretty extensively when she's been interviewed several times about her time in the House, that you are told how to vote. You're expected to vote that. They will replace you as soon as possible. The Democrat Party is expected to behave hive-mindedly and without fail vote as they are told. I don't think, you're, first of all, that wasn't what you were elected for. You weren't elected to represent the Democrat Party in Washington, D.C. You're elected to represent the constituents in your home state that voted for you. That's point one. And then point two is, the reason that they do this is that whenever they have the majority, or even when they are, like in the Senate when it was 50-50, they still had if there's a tie, the vice president will come in as the tie-breaking vote. And guess what Kamala Harris was always going to do to break? There's no choice, there's no question. And so the reason Congress is performing as terrible as it is Republicans, rightly so, but still, what do? They refuse to ever act like a monolith, and yet Democrats have been, about years up, it was almost treated like there's no margin of error. It has to be this way all the time, or God knows what will happen. Roe v. Wade will be overturned. Oh my God, it was. Now we've lost. Well, no, you didn't lose abortion. And I don't know why nobody believes his statement that he doesn't want to pass a nationwide abortion. He's never even hinted at it. Because believe it or not, before Roe, that's how the whole country operated. And granted, it was a lot more anti-abortion. It was a lot of things have changed since then. There's tons of things that have changed since then. So why wouldn't that as well? I've heard done with people on the street, and I was surprised because I thought that I'd probably be in the minority, because I thought a lot of people would be either pro-life, hard stance, no exceptions, or pro-abortion, as I said, no exceptions, choose, and that's how it goes. And but actually, no. When you hear people talk and discussed with them into the they're more deeper points than just pro-life or pro-choice. Like, at what time should be it should be a cutoff point for when you can no longer abort a child, and a lot of them land around the 12 to 15 week mark, and I was really surprised to hear that. Now, I am more in favor sort of solution for the answer to, but hell, I'll take 12 to 15 weeks if that's what the vote. But what I won't ever say is that the third trimester, and in particular, like if you're looking on the last 2 weeks of a pregnancy and you decide, even though the child is healthy, the mother's healthy, there's no reason that this wouldn't be acceptable. And if you don't want to have a child and you don't think you can have a child, adoption services would be a fantastic solution, because how many couples in the country can't conceive for one reason or another based on certain medical conditions about fertility. And so if you are that far along and the child's fully formed, and once again, I'll get into this at some other point, but there's literally at that point no excuse. And yet, as I mentioned, partial birth abortion, I was disgusted, but I was like, there's no, I had to rationalize that, there's no way that can be going on in a, really honest and serious way. Very often there's no numbers like, well, that's small compared to the others, but that's still like, wow. And you notice this when you hear about the way people discuss abortion on each side of the aisle. And I'll just end it like this. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, one of the funniest guys in the whole Senate. He's but when he starts grilling people, man, he is good. He's good as hell. He's like a judicial expert. Him and Mike Lieb, like, they could tell you any kind of fact in history about the judicial system in the United States, or probably anywhere around the world for that matter. But he once again, sparkling water, mineral water. No. Anyway, in one hearing, he. See, this was what really, really moved my opinion to a position of like, oh, okay, this is ridiculous. He went through the procedure, just vocally, no photos, no hand-drawn images, no video, no nothing, just the description of an abortion performed after I think it was 15 to 20 weeks, I think, somewhere in there. But anyway, and at that point, all major fingers and toes are finishing being formed. The baby is pretty much taken on all, if I remember the wording correctly, all relevant physical features and biological functions that resemble a human child, including nerve endings, meaning the baby can feel pain. And when I heard that, and then I heard the procedure, I was shocked. I was shocked. And so when I watched not Ted Kennedy, John Kennedy, just go over once again in specific detail. I won't describe it here, but specific detail the process for an abortion for a child during that state. And I watched this predominantly leftist invited panel. When I watched them hearing this out loud, I could tell they were uncomfortable, but it wasn't because of what was said. It was because of where it was said. It was said in a Senate hearing, recorded for television and posted online on YouTube, and that is not because they don't want these things, and I can understand why, but it's absolutely, once again. This is assuming, once again, because I hate this part, this is assuming that when people say you have the right to choose, okay, I'm sympathetic to a couple that's on birth control and something goes wrong and there's an unexpected pregnancy and things get complicated. Okay, I can understand that. Once again, I think it'd be fairly obvious to try and quickly make a decision before things get too late. But I at least can understand that. That's not really exactly what is the common situation, though, now. It's, we should sleep around all the time with whoever we want, and abortion is just like another form of birth control. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's not at all like another form of birth control. It should never be treated as such. And this is also, mind you, once again, like, this is assuming that, okay, women should have control over their bodies. They shouldn't be forced to do. Okay, well, they weren't forced to have unprotected sex. They weren't forced to not take birth control. They weren't forced to not, get drunk at a party and just be with. They weren't forced to do that weekend after weekend after weekend until they finally ended up pregnant because of how well they are. Like, and this isn't about women as a whole. This is about women who are the type that will get on a stage and celebrate their abortion. These are sick people. Like, I don't care what side of the issue you're on. When you are to the point of having a cake and a party to celebrate the fact that you had an abortion, you're an absolutely despicable, disgusting human being. That's unconscionable. You're celebrating the end of your child's life. Your potential child's life, your future child's life, whatever you want to refer to it as. There's nothing to celebrate there. There's maybe a situation where you feel somewhat more relieved that you won't have to be responsible when you don't feel like you are going to be able to be a good parent or whatever. Maybe if that's the situation, I can understand things, but I can't understand that. I can't understand it, and I think that when we get to that point, we're walking a dangerous line that just is like, because I think that there's 2 countries in the world that that have these policies. I know one of them is North Korea. The other one I think it's Iran, which company? But yeah, we're in that kind of company with our abortion policies. There's no other country in the world that, up until the Dobbs decision, and it was sent back to the states, which once again. And then there's also about a young woman who gets pregnant. If their state's abortion laws restrict or whatever the case may be, there's nothing at all that's illegal or preventing them from going to the next state over to get an abortion or going wherever they need to go to have an abortion. Hell, California has, I don't like it, but California has presented this idea that we're going to provide the costs for your trip and for your hotel expense to have the procedure done. I mean, so regardless, there's nothing at all that is preventing. Now, I don't think that's a good idea, but I think that at your an abortion, there's nothing illegal about that. And people that try to confuse other people on that, it's nothing more than fear mongering. So try to keep that in mind. And on top of that, nobody, not one person, has pro Dobbs and was for overturning Roe v. Wade ever they've expressed the fact more children being born, less children being aborted, but they are, as legislators, is to uphold the Constitution, and the Constitution didn't speak on abortion, and therefore it is something that always was considered a state-by-state issue. Okay. And like I said, they haven't expressed any other the decision came down. And by the way, also the decision, mind you, also expressly and specifically said that this is not a discussion about other related to pregnancy, or marriages, or relationships, preventing contraception, or anything else like that. This is This is specifically on the topic of only abortion, and specifically on the idea that the federal government, not local governments, federal government itself, can't pass a law nationwide because it's not a part of our Constitution. There was never a right to abortion. There was never a right to have an abortion at any time or anything like that. And there was never any right that it should have been taken away from the states. So now it's been returned there. People, especially on the conservative side, that would normally be pretty damn staunchly defensive about keeping the norms of the Constitution in place, they'd be the last ones to want, put it in a situation where it wasn't even going in at the time of the Constitution being written, and for literally every point in time up until Wade, or the passing of Roe v. Wade, and one last thing before we get into this last bit, because this is something I really wanted to get to today. I saw something that was just incredible, and I really wanted to share this with you guys. But there's one last thing, because oh no, I didn't lose my train of thought, did I? Hold on, let me make sure. Oh yeah. Sorry. When you hear politicians stating that, especially on the left, obviously, that if I'm elected, I will make Roe versus Wade the law of the land. I will make sure that it's like, okay, first of all, the president doesn't have that unilateral power. So no. Secondly, you would have to go through the process of, like any other bill or any other law. You'd have to have it go through the same process of going through the Senate and the Congress, or the Senate and the House, and then it would have to be signed into law by the president. But then you face an additional hurdle, considering that then you'd have to make sure that it was considered, because I guess maybe if you were voting to amend the Constitution, then maybe, but like, other than that, like, if you were to try and do it in any other way where you were doing it a source to where the people had no say in this, it would be slapped right back down by the courts. They made that pretty obvious, that this is a state decision and that's where it's going to remain. And I just don't understand what's so bad or scary about that. I don't get it. But anyway, that's where we're at. So anyway, so let's get, let me go ahead and get to the let me get one last thing in right here, nice and comfy. By the way, I hope that I'm gonna listen side by side after this to the audio and the audio from the stream last before this to see what this sounds like, because by every indication I have here, this should be sounding like this should be sounding like a different show, I guess, at this point, by comparison to the last one. My God. So, man, I'm very happy with that part. Anyway, so I was, all the political information. It looks like the bandwidth for some reason. Hold on one second. Let me just, I'm sorry, I always do this, and this is for focusing on the audio and not on the internet and streaming aspect of things, but a lot of unusual things happening here, and well, I can't see why. Well, here, let me get rid of that. Yeah, I know. Okay, let's see if maybe that'll help out a little bit. Now, hang on. Here we go. Oh, I know what happened. Well, I'll have to do that something. And hopefully it maintains all right for the rest of this episode. But I can't change it right now. And hopefully it's coming in clear for you guys. I know that there's that one dropout, but it looks like it just keeps giving me these messages that it's not keeping up. But I mean, I'm checking the streams and everything looks like it's coming in. Maybe it's a little jerky, but it doesn't seem like there's any other issue. But anyway, of course, I've been keeping up with election information from all different angles and from cable news, online news, podcasts, and online shows, online streams, everything. And I watch a lot of people regularly, and then there's some people I try to catch every once in a while. And I don't usually watch this, but it caught my eye. Glenn Greenwald. I'm not a giant fan of Glenn, but I will say this. I respect the hell out of Glenn because he's one of the few that really seems to value the what do you call it? He seems to really, really value the idea of what's the word I'm looking for? Impartial journalist, and the journalist that doesn't take a side politically, tries to report information as impartially and as down the middle as he can. He was always known as being pretty left for most of his life, and still to this day I believe he is. But of course, in this election, it's not about really right or left. It's about the ideas, and because neither candidate sounds like what their party has traditionally put up. But anyway, he was first discussing the polls like everybody does, but he prefaced that with, I could come out and talk about polls and talk about how they are, but I really don't like doing that because essentially it's just an educated guess, but nothing more than a guess still. And so I like that sort of intro, but then he went on a very specific speech, and this was about not speech, analysis about Trump and the people that follow him, and why he's so appealing to the voter base, and especially people that don't normally that used to vote for the other party, or demographics that traditionally haven't voted on for Republican. Why is he so appealing there? Well, I was watching and he made some great points, but then something hit me right away, and it wasn't necessarily something he mentioned, but something that I think he hinted at, and I kind of picked up and ran with in my own head, and I had something that just hit me really, really like wow, that's so, it's just kind of like one of those things where you kind of self pondering the same ideas and trying to come up with a conclusion that maybe adds on to the existing one that's here. And so I have that clip ready. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, and we'll close the episode after this. But let me bring this up, and then we'll go from there. But I had to get this out today because I actually I'm way over, I know, but I started very late. I have kind of decided I think I'm going to aim for 11:30 to 12:30 now. I just got to start doing shorter shows. But it's been so long that, you guys deserve a bonus, I guess. Or maybe I just deserve to have to stay on longer. I don't know. Either way. But here, let me pull this up. What I was going to say was, I think because I missed so many days, I might go ahead and do a show tomorrow. I know Sunday is usually a day that I don't stream, but because I've missed so many days, and because Tuesday is the election, I kind of want to get in. Maybe I'll take Tuesday off. I don't know. Not because I wouldn't be able to do an episode, but because it's just like I'm not ready for that kind of analysis day kind of information like that, and there's going to be so many of the biggest names running that day, and people are going to be watching those. And not to mention the fact that I'm probably going to want to be glued to those myself. So, and maybe I'll just kind of make up for it that way. Maybe I'll do tomorrow and skip Tuesday. But I'll let you guys know. I'm leaning that way, but I'll let you guys know for sure before that happens, obviously. But I will. But besides it, I will be on tomorrow. That's one thing that I think I can safely say. I really want to make sure because, like I said, I feel bad that I missed so many shows, but also because it's an unusual week. So, anyway, let me get. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. Let me get that clip up and. Which, by the way, I have seen some pretty solid numbers for today that have been popping in and out, but nevertheless been sticking around for some time. So thank you guys so much for the views. I appreciate it. Every view I very much appreciate, but most specifically, anybody just giving the show a chance, I really, really, really do appreciate it. Especially after
even though he grew up wealthy, he grew up in an outer borough in Queens. And there's a lot of resentment of Manhattan elites. I think that's why Trump wanted to go and build these gigantic buildings in Manhattan that towered over everybody else and live at the top of Trump Tower, because it was a way of vengeance and this resentment against elites that just comes natural to him.
Okay, that kind of touched on it, but I was gonna that's also really good points. But the main thing that hit me, and I'll just mention it like this. So I started thinking about this, and the way he not only can do, I heard this the other day after he did the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and he did 3 hours there. He got on a plane, went to an event that was it wasn't a rally, it was something else. And then he went to the rally from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast to a campaign event to a rally, and spoke all day. And I know who you are, and I don't care how bad your ambition for power is. The idea that somebody inauthentic and somebody not dedicated to the ideas of and the responsibilities and the principles of what it means to be the commander-in-chief of the United States, they're not going to be able to do that kind of schedule. And if they are, they're not going to be able to do it day after day after day after day for months before the election. But the most revealing thing, the absolute most revealing thing came to me when I started thinking about this. It's like Trump wears the vest. Okay, he wears the vest all day. And he says the thing like about Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian. He doesn't. I don't know who this comedian is. I love the line, by the way. Nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me. Which it's hyperbole. It's a joke. He knows that. I'm sure he knows. Obviously, there's somebody in history that's maybe done more for Puerto Rico than Donald Trump. But it's just to state that I got no problem with Puerto Rican people. It's like, which, by the way, the whole thing. What bugs me the most is that the comedian referred to the island as a floating island of trash. He said nothing at all about Puerto Ricans. He said the island of Puerto Rico. And, what's kind of crazy is that because of this green agenda and their desire to make sure that anyone at all that they have any kind of influence over is going to abide by their dictates and their rules, they essentially told Puerto Rico, by the way, you can't burn your trash anymore. So we only have about 4 large landfills, and they're getting filled right now. It's like, doesn't matter, can't burn your trash anymore. So they're having a serious problem with trash on the island. That joke didn't just come out of nowhere. And once again, it's not like it's not saying the Puerto Rican people are trash. It's saying the island of Puerto Rico is becoming an island of trash. And it is becoming an island of trash because they don't know what to do. And, what do you do when you have a much more powerful nation telling you, nope, can't do that? Well, what are we supposed to do? I don't know. Figure it out. So who's the tyrant here? And finally, the last thing was, this was the most important thing to me. And it was in reference to both the garbage thing and the McDonald's thing. Those are two more events in this campaign that are going to become like these historic symbols for this campaign. But what I immediately thought was, wait, so Kamala, by all intents and purposes, was not telling the truth about her history in working for McDonald's. She probably doesn't give a shit about Puerto Rico. She just is going to use this as a way to attack Trump. But think of if you had Kamala Harris, who went up to one of her campaign advisors. She went in one day and they said, okay, today you're going to come up to McDonald's and we're going to have you interact with the employees there. You're going to go ahead and put on, you're going to put on the apron and we'll have you cook fries and serve the people. She would have been furious. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. And she had showed up one day, same thing. Well, to show that we think Trump was wrong for this, we're going to have you go out with this trash collector today. And so you need to put on this collection vest. And no, I'm not putting that dirty thing on. What are you talking about? That's Kamala Harris. And that's the modern Democrat Party. They don't give a shit about working people. They don't give a shit about lower to middle class people. They don't care at all. They will give you every bumper sticker campaign slogan under the sun, and they will tell you that, well, you might be feeling like the effects of inflation, but actually the economy is doing great. Yeah, it's doing great, all right, man. I'm feeling it every day. This wonderful economy. I just can't get enough of it. So that was where it hit me. Like Trump, the dude that has been known for all my life as like this super wealthy New York real estate mogul, is so personable and actually enjoys the experience of talking to regular Americans. And the left's trying to hit him with these things like, well, he's not really working there. No shit, he's not really working there. But he's trying to experience a day in the life of your average blue-collar worker in the United States whom he considers to be the real backbone of the country. I got to tell you, I don't see how anybody can derive such negative sorts of conclusions from that. But that's not what it is, obviously. It's that it's so damn brilliant, and it shows you exactly what kind of person he is. There's no hidden Donald Trump. Everybody that talks about him says what you see is pretty much what you get. And everything I see is things that I don't understand where the danger is. I don't understand where the fascist dictator is. I haven't seen one sign during his last term or during this campaign at all that shows any kind of tendency. First of all, tyrants in history have not exactly been friendly to the court jesters, the ones that kind of can poke fun and mock and have a good time, and they're not really ones to make jokes and things like that. So it's already, you got that, plus this insistence on, even though Secret Service hates this, inviting people up on stage when they are just going nuts and going crazy to actually be up there with President Trump. Would Kamala do that? No. In fact, that's all close on. The last thing I've been seeing lately from her rallies is that every event now she's getting protesters who are, obviously, sympathetic to Gaza and who knows, probably sympathetic to Hamas. But, she brought this on herself because this ridiculous genocide argument is what is promoted by Hamas sympathizers and people who have no idea about the history of the region. Because regardless of what you think about the conflict, it's not a genocide. The only genocide that has been attempted by the Islamic terrorists in different parts of the country. But to the extent that there are casualties that are non-combatant casualties of the conflict, yeah, it's of course it's sad, of course it's fucked up, and of course nobody wants to see it. But the reason it's happening is because there was an aggressor in this situation, and that aggressor wasn't Israel in this situation. And that's not been the stance for pretty much the whole season of fighting. But I won't go too far into that. That's another subject for another day. I don't even know what to think of that conflict. But I will say this, that I think that the way people view it, no matter which way you slice it, is not intricate enough to really encompass all the important details of the conflict. But the point is that she's been getting heckled and booed and forced to stop speaking at her own rallies now. And at the last one, this was like the third one in a row where this happened, you just got this look on her face like she knows it's over. And I don't want to get everybody too hyped up and too excited that it's already finished and she's already lost and everything's going to be in Trump's favor. But from what I could tell, it's like it was clear that, while Trump's drawing these massive audiences that are hanging on to his every word and stay till the very end, her audiences are getting her to stop speaking and shut up, and now getting visibly angry on stage, while they shout her down and start protesting her within the rally. And so it's just, I don't know. It's one of those situations where this is really, it really is a turning point, and we better get this right, because it's just staring everybody in the face. It really is. It's really staring everybody in the face. I don't know how you can look at the situation. I know people are entrenched in their own parties, but the thing that you have to do at some point is you have to find somebody, especially if you're on the left. You don't have to find somebody on the far right. You don't have to find somebody on the right. You don't have to find somebody who's an entrenched Republican. Just find somebody that will represent the parties a little bit more fairly, just a little bit more. The ones that are not relating Trump to Hitler and all of his followers to Nazis might be a good start. That might be a good idea to start with. But just my point is that the way that Trump is portrayed is just so completely over the top. And regardless of what you think of him, there's much more to this situation than just that. And when you're only focusing on the threats that are presented by this media, who has gone off the deep end completely this cycle. I mean, they were bad before, but they have gone so far over the edge this cycle that there's no denying that they just are there doing literally everything they can think of to just stop this guy. And I hope that everybody out there, even if you've never done it before, just find somebody, even a left-wing person. Believe me, there are liberals and they're not leftists. There's liberals and Democrats who actually are supportive of Trump, or supportive of whoever they support, or don't support anybody. Just hear at least some arguments that aren't the worst insults you can hurl at a political candidate, and then maybe try to rethink. Just rethink it just one more time before the election, because I'm telling you, this has been from someone like me, who, like I said, I used to be a pretty left-leaning person, and I kind of have the same experience of a lot of people that joined Trump's team that had been former Democrats, like that I used to believe and follow and believed was worth promoting. It's not. Nothing about it is similar. They don't talk the same way. They don't act the same way. They don't treat people the same way. It's not the same party, and the media that supports them is so belligerently angry and propagandist, and it's just so win by any means necessary, that I can't see anything there that really makes me feel like until they get a reality check, they're not going to. I'd love to have two parties that were equally, trustworthy again, but until someone knocks them off of their arrogant moral high horse to a situation where they're actually finally back on the ground with the rest of us, I don't see that happening. And maybe a Trump win could do that. I would be hopeful, but just the point is, right now, until there's a shift, I just things are just too far gone for me to accept any other kind of decision on my end. So, and I'm not going to be an annoying person. Go make sure you vote. Go make sure you vote. You should vote, but go make sure you vote. I don't tell you that. I would encourage you to vote, but I would also encourage you just, if you only listen to one side of the aisle, which, mainstream media is always that. Find a podcaster. I'm presenting my perspective, but don't just take my perspective. Take somebody else's. Take somebody that is somebody that's more on the side that whatever you want to do. But just get another perspective, because look, Glenn Greenwald is still pretty left wing. He is a Democrat from. He's not in the United States anymore after the. In case you don't know, he was the one that broke the Snowden information, and that's one of the other reasons why I kind of have a deep admiration for Glenn, because he's not scared. He's not like, as far as I've seen, he's not on the level of like a James O'Keefe. Still somebody who's not afraid to chase down something that is incredibly, incredibly controversial and will definitely be getting him in trouble, but for the sake of the American people and people around the world knowing this information, it's worth it. So Glenn is definitely worth checking out. But anyway, my point was just that try to hear some other opinions and do that before unless you've already voted, then it's kind of not. But either way, thank you so much again, you guys. I will, like I said, I'm going to be live tomorrow, but I'll be taking off Tuesday for Election Day, because I don't think I can compete with the bigger channels. So, and then I'll be live again on Wednesday, I'm sure. Anyway, man, this was a great return. I feel so much better now, and I'm guessing that compared to my last streams, I'm sure this one, at the bare minimum, you can at least hear me this time. So, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. There's links down below for following me on X, and if you ever want to be so generous as to give me a little tip, just a little tip. We don't have to, not playing just the tip, but just, handing a little tip. That's where you can do that. I'm trying to incorporate other methods for that as well, unless you want to do a super chat, which is fine as well. But once again, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Either way, I'm just glad you